What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to the Versus series. This is the series where I take two similar elements from a Call of Duty game, put them side by side, have a good look at their stats to find out which one is better. In today's episode, we're going to have a look at the Frag versus the Semtex grenade in Modern Warfare. Let's not mess around, let's just hop right into it, and let's start it off with the amount of time it takes to throw each of these pieces of equipment. Keep in mind, this isn't just the animation I'm measuring, I'm actually measuring the total amount of time that your gun is unavailable while throwing the piece of equipment, and also keep in mind that this is tested with an SMG in my hand. This will vary slightly depending on the weapon you're using. But as we can see here, with the frag grenade, it takes 1.37 seconds to throw it, assuming you're not going to hold it and cook it for a while, which, let's be honest, you probably should be doing that with a frag grenade. Whereas with a Semtex, usually when you throw it, you just want to get it out of your hands as fast as possible. And when you do this, your gun is unavailable for 1.32 seconds. So very, very similar in this area, but technically speaking, the Semtex has a slight edge over the frag. Now for both of these pieces of equipment, this does change if you're using the Amped perk. This allows you to throw them a little bit faster. With the frag grenade, while using Amp, you can throw it in 0.98 seconds now. Whereas with the Semtex, once again, it is just very slightly faster at 0.95 seconds. Overall, I would call this a pretty negligible difference between these two. The next thing I want to look at comparing these two together is the amount of time it takes to detonate with each of these. So with the frag grenade, from the moment you pull the pin out of the grenade to the moment that it will explode, this is 3.5 seconds. And of course, that will occur if you hold it in your hands or if you throw it. It doesn't matter. Once that pin is pulled, 3.5 seconds later, the frag is going to explode. With the Semtex, on the other hand, you can hold that in your hand with the pin pulled for as long as you want. It will never go off until it leaves your hand. From the moment it leaves your hand to the moment it explodes is 2 seconds. So if you're just trying to get that equipment out there to deal damage as fast as possible, the Semtex is the better bet here. However, every situation is going to be a bit different, and there are other characteristics we do have to consider when looking at this, but we'll do that towards the end of the video. The next thing I want to have a look at is how far can you throw these pieces of equipment? Do you throw one of them further than the other one? Well, it turns out you don't. I stood in the exact same position here, looking at the exact same point, so everything would be nice and consistent. And it turns out both the frag and the Semtex will land at the exact same point. And this did surprise me a little bit. I always thought that you could throw the frag just a little bit further. It always seemed like the arc was a little bit better on the frag grenade, but that's not true at all. However, of course, you have to factor in the frag grenade can bounce and roll, and therefore technically you can get extra distance out of the frag grenade. It's just the initial throw itself is going to be identical. Now moving on to quite possibly the most important thing that a lot of you guys are probably wondering about is, what does the damage radius look like? How much damage do they deal? Is one more powerful than the other? Once again, I was very surprised to find that, at least based on my hand testing here, the damage ranges and damage radius appears to be identical between the frag and the Semtex. With both of them, they deal damage within a radius of about 8 meters, which is pretty decent because, like I said, that's the radius. The total diameter of that is 16 meters, so it covers a pretty big area. However, that's not necessarily the lethal kill range, that's just the range that you can get a hit on the enemy player. Our lethal range on a full health enemy in core game modes is about 3.5 meters for both the frag as well as the Semtex. It's also worth noting, I calculated some of the damage values. If you're right on top of the frag or the Semtex, you're going to be receiving 140 points of damage, so that's definitely going to kill you in core game modes. And I wanted to point out that that damage is exactly the same between the frag and the Semtex, and if you're right on the outer radius of where the explosive can deal damage to you, it deals roughly 75 damage. So that's something that's important to note. If you do get a hit marker with a frag or a Semtex and it's not against an EOD player, they've only got at most 25 health left. But this is something that I was really surprised to see. In previous Call of Duty games, traditionally the frag would deal a little bit more damage or it'd have a slightly bigger damage radius compared to the Semtex, but not in this game. They appear to be identical in this area. So that pretty much covers it for the statistical comparison between these two. However, it is important to also look at the characteristics of each of these and just how they behave differently. With a frag grenade, for instance, we have the option to cook it, so if you're good enough with this, you can time it just right so the enemy has no time to react to that explosive once it gets close to them. Whereas with a Semtex, you don't have any control over that timing, and in many situations, it often leaves the enemy time to run away or jump away from that explosive. Additionally, with a frag grenade, you have the ability to bounce them. And this can be a pro as well as a con. Something I really like about frag grenades is if you know there's somebody that's camping inside a room or inside a building, I really like the fact that I can bounce it off of a door frame, for instance, and it will land basically right on that enemy player and kill them, whereas with a Semtex, the only way I'm going to get the Semtex that close to them is to actually expose myself and let the enemy get a line of sight on me as I'm throwing it at them. The downside to this though with the frag grenade is sometimes you'll just get a bad bounce or a bad roll and it will go a completely different direction, or it will just roll away from your enemy when you didn't want it to do that. Whereas with the Semtex, you can have that really precise throw, and as long as you hit the point you meant to hit, it's staying there and it will go off from that exact location. Additionally, a big upside with the Semtex is if you stick an enemy player, they are guaranteed to die even if they have the EOD perk. Whereas with a frag grenade, against a full health enemy in core game modes using EOD, you can't kill them with a single frag grenade. Now, one other thing that's really important to mention when looking at the frag versus the Semtex is the practical amount of time it takes to throw these. We already looked at the theoretical throw time, like the absolute minimum throw time with each of them. But in reality, with a frag grenade, in most situations, you want to be cooking it for a certain period of time. So you want to be holding it in your hand after you pull the pin, so you can really take that enemy off guard with the explosion. So in reality, with a frag grenade, you're typically going to be cooking it for at least 2 seconds. Plus, if you add on that initial animation before you pull the pin, you're looking at a roughly 3-second throw time, rather than a quick, like 1.3-second throw time. Because with a Semtex, there's no benefit to holding it in your hand for a long period of time. It's much better in those situations where you just want to quickly throw it, get it out of your hands, and get your gun up so you can be back in the fight as soon as possible. So overall, after looking at all of these different characteristics between the frag and the Semtex, you can see that they each have their own pros and cons. And as a result, I would say you really can't go wrong with either of these pieces of equipment. But if you were to ask me, I would say that I tend to lean more towards the frag grenade over the Semtex. And the main reasons for this is, first off, I often find myself in situations where there's an enemy camping in a room and I know he's there, and I really like banking that frag off of a door jam, for instance. But on top of that, I just think the overall cookability of a frag grenade leads to more consistent kills. With a Semtex, if I don't stick the enemy with the Semtex itself, I often find they have enough time to get outside of at least the lethal damage radius, and therefore I just find I get more hit markers with the Semtex compared to the frag grenade, where when I cook it really well, that enemy doesn't stand a chance if they're not using EOD. So whenever I'm given the choice between a frag or a Semtex, I generally lean more towards a frag. Semtexes absolutely have their place, and I don't mind using them from time to time, but overall, I do think the frag does come out on top, at least for me. But of course, that is just my opinion based on the data and based on my experience. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about this? What is your favorite between these two, the frag grenade or the Semtex? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.